Today, Shifu will continue explaining the current international situation to everyone. Why do we need to explain the international situation? Because these events now endanger the progress of world civilization, and they also threaten the Buddhist path. If the Communist Party were not set on destroying Buddhism, there would be no need for me to talk about these things at all. What Shifu just said, did you all hear it? Did you listen?
Yes, Shifu.
All right. Since you've heard it, I won't repeat it. Now let me explain this to you. Across the world, in the United States, Europe, and other developed nations, their economies have already been economically invaded by these evil CCP organizations. They are storming cities and capturing territory. They have forced the door and entered the house. They used state-owned enterprises to acquire major institutions, including Mercedes-Benz, Deutsche Bank, and several American banks, buying up American companies. At the same time, they pushed their own state-owned enterprises into these countries, establishing bases, encampments, and economic beachheads within these nations. A private enterprise simply cannot compete with an entire state. In communist states, ordinary people are desperately poor, but the state itself is immensely wealthy, and that wealth is used to invade other countries. Hearing this, you may find it a bit frightening, but I am telling you today, this is the reality. In China, none of the publicly listed companies are truly governed by their boards. All of their boards are appointed by the Communist Party. State officials serve as the board chairman and directors. Do you understand what that implies? To this day, the United States and Europe, already invaded, remain unawakened, still dreaming. If this continues, a few years from now, the entire international order will be swallowed by the evil of this Communist Party. There is no fairness at all. People claim these are shareholding corporations. China fundamentally has no shareholding enterprises. They simply do not exist. You might be surprised to hear this. Dowie, tell me, does this surprise you? How does it make you feel?
Amitabha, Shifu. I'm not surprised now, because you have spoken of this long ago.
There is simply no such thing as a private enterprise there. Can an individual start a business in China? Yes, but those businesses can never truly succeed because all resources are controlled by the state. I once ran a computer company in China. I ran a private enterprise. But you have no idea what kind of private enterprise that actually was. Then why was it able to operate at all? Do you understand the nature of the company I ran?
No, Shifu.
At that time, the so-called private enterprise I ran in Yantai, I took it over through family connections, through someone's child's great uncle. In truth, it wasn't a private enterprise at all. It was called a personal business, but that was a facade. All the staff were official government employees transferred from various bureaus. Do you follow?
Now I understand, Shifu. I really understand.
That company, I won't name it. Naming it would cause problems. In reality, it was what they call affiliated. It was the mayor's enterprise. In China, people talk about white gloves, but in reality, there is no such thing. You're not even a glove. It's simply a disguised method to make them appear internationally acceptable. So in terms of how these companies are structured, China has exported a massive number of counterfeit private enterprises to the US and EU. They are not private. Take Huawei, for example. How could it possibly be a private company? Take Alibaba. How could that possibly be a private company? That is simply impossible. Do you understand?
Understood, Shifu.
Their directors are all Communist Party officials. All management cadres are Communist Party officials. They are officials from state-owned enterprises. Let me tell you, take Wanhua Chemical Group, for example. Wanhua is also a well-known international group. They build companies and factories everywhere, presenting themselves as private enterprises or presenting themselves as joint stock companies. But fundamentally, it is a state-owned enterprise. Do you understand?
Yes, Shifu.
Take Wanhua, for example. Its original chairman, the chairman of the board. Who was he? He was Chu, formerly a deputy director of the Yantai Municipal Economic Commission. We knew each other. We dined together.
Yes, Shifu.
All these listed companies in China, they are layered, layer upon layer. Can an individual business go public? No, it cannot. So how you get listed? For example, at the time, I knew someone in the pharmaceutical industry. He appeared to be an individual operator, making antihypertensive medicine. But in fact, he wasn't an individual operator either. He was from Binzhou Medical University. This medicine came from there. It seemed that a department head, the head of the pharmacy department, came out to run it. When he came out to do this, he developed something like this. He developed an antihypertensive drug, his own invention. You just apply it to the body and the blood pressure goes down. After developing this antihypertensive drug, he wanted to go public. He wanted to take it public. He came back and said to me, I've been promoted again. He said, the leadership called me in and talked to me. They said going public is allowed, but I can only keep my own salary and my annual bonus. As for everything else involved in going public, you must follow China's official rules for going public. Do you know what going public by the rules actually means? He was promoted to dean, and once your company goes public, you become a state company. Do you understand?
Yes, Shifu.
It is very clearly state-owned. There is no ambiguity about it. But you can only put it under your own name, claiming the company is a joint stock enterprise as if it were private. Do you get it?
I get it, Shifu.
What are these kinds of enterprises called in China? They are called bridgeheads for invading foreign countries. This is aimed at the United States and the European Union as well, using this method to carry out invasion, economic invasion. I'm telling you right now, the US and Europe don't even know where they're dying. The United States doesn't know either. You see, they allowed Chinese companies to list in the United States, to list on places like, NASDAQ and the like. Do you know what these listed companies are actually for? They are all Chinese state-owned enterprises. That's what it means when they go abroad to operate. Even Elon Musk, doesn't he think he's smart? Even people like Musk cannot escape this. When you go to China to do a joint venture, who are you actually partnering with? You are partnering with the state. Do you understand? It's not some car company, it belongs to the state. If they say you live, you live. If they say you die, you die. If they say you can make money, you make it. If they say you can't, you won't. Through this method, by giving you money, they bring foreign business owners, these major entrepreneurs, under their control. Do you understand?
Yes, Shifu.
I just said that it's divided into many different levels. There is what they call the central state level tier. At that central state level, for example, companies like China Eastern Airlines, China Southern Airlines, and China's massive shipbuilding enterprises, and companies like Alibaba. Don't bring up people like Jack Ma. They're nothing but scams. To put it bluntly, they're used, wiped clean, and thrown away when they're done. You say you're a private enterprise? Forget it. Only foreigners and people in China meant to be harvested fall for this. To really understand this, you can go to the China Foreign Affairs University and listen in on their lectures. What are they doing? What do you think they're doing? They divide things into several levels. One level is what they call bringing them in. When they bring in companies like Google, once they're brought in, the state steps in and partners with them. The top executives of companies like Google, including Apple as well, they get to enjoy the benefits of dictatorship. Enjoying so-called state-level privileges. Eating, drinking, whoring, gambling. How grand that is. Not a single one of them avoids the trap. What is going on with them? How can they be this foolish? Look, when they expand overseas, they enter the United States under the name of private enterprise. That's what it means, forcing their way in, straight through the door, using state resources to devour European and American companies day after day. These companies may look like they're thriving, but in reality, they've already been occupied by the CCP. Do you understand?
Yes, Shifu.
It is terrifying. Why didn't Shifu support Terry Gou at the time? Because he was a thief brought in from the inside. After bringing Terry Gou in, they gave him money and handed him everything he needed. Then supplied him with all kinds of resources to build his business. If it were true private competition, this wouldn't happen. Do you understand?
Yes, Shifu.
In real competition, everyone should have equal access to resources. So when you look at these big corporations, what do they call them? They call them central state-level enterprises. Take Ren Zhengfei, take Huawei. That is a central state-level enterprise. Don't underestimate that old man behind Huawei. He is a ministerial-level official. Do you understand?
Now we know.
Oh, you still don't understand, and I really can't say much more than this. As for all those foreign media outlets, what do they know? Nothing. They have no idea who the people coming out of China really are, or what they're actually doing. Even those so-called spiritual groups that head to the United States, they end up fooling America so badly it can barely stand, right? All of them, every single one, has no understanding of how the CCP really operates on the inside. Let me put it this way. If you don't believe me, just look. Overseas, even Deutsche Bank was taken over by the CCP long ago. That makes it a CCP enterprise. Plainly put, a Chinese state-owned company. Do you understand? Are you clear on this? They have endless backing to prop it up.
Today you've confirmed it. Before, we were only guessing that so-and-so must be CCP people.
Do you know what they do? They're never going to let it just collapse. They don't take over a company necessarily to make money. It's to extend their tentacles into Europe, into the EU, so that you have no way to cut them off. How are you supposed to cut them off? Think about Volvo. It was acquired. They claim it was a private company. Give me a break. It belongs to high-ranking CCP officials. Do you understand? That's what's called a state-level enterprise. There are also enterprises at the provincial ministerial level. These are what they call provincially run state enterprises. Even these enterprises are allowed to go abroad and carry out economic invasion. This is what you call forcing your way in, straight through the door. This is their full, complete strategy of economic invasion. Look at the United States. So many presidents have come and gone, and not a single one has seen this. And those so-called China hands experts, what exactly are they experts in? Have they ever worked inside the system? They're just sitting there talking to you. Do you really think they're telling you the truth? Let me tell you something real. Once, I was on a train. I was talking with an American woman. I didn't know what she did. She spoke English. I had barely spoken a few sentences when two men suddenly approached. "Hey, watch what you say." I looked at him and said, "What's wrong, brother?" "You, come here." "Show your ID. I'm with state security. You're not allowed to say anything else to her." Why did he step in? That American woman was likely from the US Embassy, some kind of staff member or official. She was just sitting there on the train. I had no idea that was who she was. I was only asking her, "Do you still believe China has private enterprises?" So-called private enterprises in China are nothing more than a bowl of food they let you have. You're never allowed to truly rise. And the moment you do start to rise, you must become state-owned. That was exactly what she didn't understand. I hadn't even finished saying this when they shut me down. That's when I thought, aren't people supposed to board at random? I boarded halfway through the trip. Do you understand what that means?
Yes, Shifu. They were tailing her. Or they're everywhere.
They were following her specifically. When those two got off, others boarded shortly after, but it was still the same surveillance. She had no idea. She was that unaware. I understood it immediately. Since I have now exposed this to all of you, this is a bombshell. If Europe and the US continue to allow these Chinese enterprises that have already acquired companies and still allow them to operate in Europe, then you're finished. Completely finished, including Taiwan.
Yes, Shifu.
How can a private company compete against a nation? The Chinese people are kept this poor, worked to exhaustion, while this state has already invaded Europe and the United States economically. Completely. Not to mention Australia. Do you understand?
Yes, Shifu. The man from Huawei is named Ren Zhangfei.
What is he, really? Nothing but a party lackey. What's there to talk about? I have no patience left for these CCP officials. They can all get the hell out. They are vile, absolutely vile, because they now have their hands on the economies of Europe and the United States. Let me tell you, Donald Trump is all talk. He can't touch them. Can he take on Apple, Google, or Elon Musk? They all collaborate with the CCP. They say, oh, it is corporate cooperation. Nonsense. That's cooperation with a state, nothing else. Which of them can bear to abandon their interests in China? They cannot.
No.
You say you won't attack Taiwan? If they really attack Taiwan, you'll have no choice but to watch. Your economic lifelines are held by the CCP. What are you still boasting about? Taiwan is no different. Anyone with major business interests in mainland China is not someone you can trust. Why? He must have connections with CCP officials. There is no doubt about it, which means they are selling out Taiwan. Do you understand?
Yes, Shifu.
And what was he planning to do? He even planned to run for president. What a joke. Let me tell you this. The time has not yet come. So why am I speaking of this today? Why am I teaching this now? To expose China's outward aggression, its economic aggression. Invading the economy is invading the territory. That is how terrifying it is. I've hinted at this before, and yet the leaders of Europe and the United States still haven't awakened. Yes, I'm just a blade of grass, but this blade of grass is not small. I went to open an account at a Swiss bank, and to my shock, the major shareholder was the CCP. Do you understand?
Oh, I see.
How terrifying is that? Truly terrifying. Even the media, the propaganda institutions, even Voice of America cannot escape the CCP's control. They cannot escape it. Do you understand?
Yes, Shifu. You wrote about VOA on Facebook.
It's frightening, extremely frightening. If you don't believe it, look at the internet, at how it's managed. Why can't the West wake up? Because ordinary people have no idea at all. They wonder, why is it that we in Europe and America have fallen behind? They've stuck a huge syringe into you and drained your blood dry. All of it siphoned off to China. How could you not be poor? Do you understand?
Yes, Shifu.
How does this make you feel?
It feels like, what can we do? We don't know.
Just sit and watch.
Shifu has a way.
Even if I had a solution, I wouldn't give it to them. Why should I? If I said this outright, they could kill me. And my relatives are still trying to survive in China. If they invade America and bring Europe to its knees, what does that have to do with me? The West doesn't even acknowledge a rotten pickled vegetable like me, this blade of grass. Instead, they parade those red princelings, second, third, fourth generations, who are nothing but absolute garbage. What do you think you can gain from them? It's laughable. Like that so-called friend of Xi Jinping in Taiwan, talking on video. He never gets to the point. He just doesn't have the brains for it. Do you understand?
Yes, Shifu.
Now about joint ventures. I'll tell you this. I've actually been involved in these things myself. When foreigners go to China to form joint ventures, why is it that you may want to proceed, but once the party branch says no, the deal is over? Why don't some enterprises make it? Their strategy at the time was simple. Bring them in first. Then they slowly digest them. Do you understand? That is what slow digestion means. Do you get it?
Yes, Shifu.
What does slow digestion mean?
Slowly infiltrate, then slowly consume them.
Right? Consume them, slowly consume them. It's like bandits abducting a bride. Once you're dragged back, don't bother struggling. Spend one night there, and you become his wife. Do you understand?
Understood, Shifu.
It's terrifying. Truly terrifying. What the CCP is exporting now is evil. I'm telling you, they are exporting evil to the entire world. The West once had freedom and democracy, and your democratic societies are thrown into total chaos because of it. Sometimes I find it laughable. How did it come to this? Even Wall Street is not spared. Do you understand? They talk about how the dollar will crush the renminbi. Can you kill the dollar?
I think so.
Put it this way. If you print those US dollars in China, are you killing yourself?
No.
Exactly. When I left China, I brought 500 euro bills. I spent them all. Brand new, crisp, even with consecutive serial numbers. I also brought US dollars. I still have a stack I've never spent. Brand new. The smell of the ink and solvent is incredibly strong. I haven't used them in 10 years. So what does this tell you? It tells you those weren't dollars earned through business or trade. They were printed locally. Isn't that right?
Oh, yes, Shifu. I understand.
At the very least, they were printed nearby. Who would ship a boatload of cash to China? Wouldn't that be ridiculously inefficient?
Yes, Shifu.
So where did it come from? That's why, as ordinary people, we just sit back and watch the tigers fight from the mountain. Why am I exposing this today? Because those frauds go on YouTube, on X, talking nonsense all day long. And that kind of political messaging ends up steering Americans around. And Taiwan still thinks the United States will help them. So this time, did they help Iran? Did the planes and weapons show up? Did they actually do anything? Right? Haven't you seen it yourself? Iran is just a tiny place, hardly any people at all, economically weak, with nothing but a bit of oil. Tell me, if this were China, would the United States dare touch a single hair?
They wouldn't dare.
Just look at the so-called Chinese enterprises in the United States. Those with the Communist Party. That is the state. I'm telling you, that is CCP territory, which means large parts of the United States are already CCP territory. Do you understand?
Yes, Shifu.
So, what can you even do to them?
Right.
If Europe and the United States truly woke up, then everything before that would be wiped out. None of it counts anymore. Volvo, you were acquired? Fine. Confiscated. No such deal. It's over. Do you understand?
Yes, Shifu.
Only then can you solve the real problem. If you can't do that, tell me, what can actually be solved? Nothing can be done. All you can do is wait to die.
Nothing can be done. Yes, Shifu.
Look at what you told me earlier. Your second sister's child working at a Chinese-funded company in the United States.
Right.
That's a Chinese state-owned enterprise. Do you understand?
Right.
Does your second sister and does he support the CCP?
Probably.
Still? Listen to what you're saying. They've already made it clear.
They do, Shifu.
They say the CCP is great, right?
Yes.
What's wrong with China? Isn't Taiwan returning to the mainland a good thing? That's what they said, right?
Yes.
Think about it. Your second sister is practically American. Her son is a born and bred American. And now he's become a flag bearer for the Chinese Communist Party. So what are you still boasting about? And America still thinks it can take on the CCP? I'm telling you, unless they listen to what I'm saying today, wake up. Completely remove all Chinese enterprises from the United States and completely pull all American enterprises out of China. Only then do they have a chance to rise again. Trump talks about making America great again, so why does he keep stumbling? Tell me.
Because the CCP has already been inside for a long time.
Of course, the CCP has shackled America hand and foot. You can't move, all right? The moment you try, you ask, when did they shackle me? You were shackled long ago.
Yes.
Do you understand? How do they do it? Through fraud, through deception. Foreigners believe these are private companies. They don't allow state-owned enterprises to enter. The United States doesn't allow state enterprises to buy land or build factories there, right? So they claim they're private. But how are they private? They're all state-run. Do you understand?
Yes, Shifu.
Taiwan is the same. Taiwan is like a small fish skewered on a massive string. You just go along blindly. Look at TSMC building facilities in the United States. TSMC is a genuinely private enterprise, right? Even if the state holds some shares, when the CCP says the state holds shares, that's nonsense. They're all state enterprises. Those so-called shares, they're all lies. Take Haier Group, for example. Back then, you'd hear that so-and-so held millions of shares, all registered under individual names. But once you sit down and have a meal with them, you realize they're provincial or ministerial level CCP officials, even members of the Central Committee. Not a single cent is actually under their own account. They only get annual bonuses. What kind of bonuses? Bonuses big enough to fund eating, drinking, whoring, and gambling. All state resources belong to them. They spend money however they want. Just submit it for reimbursement. Do you understand?
Yes, Shifu.
When they need money, do you think they have to struggle for it? I'm telling you, one phone call and the money arrives immediately. Why? Because it belongs to the state. Do you understand?
Yes, Shifu.
But what about ordinary individuals? You make one phone call asking for money, you get slapped in the face. You think an individual business can rise up? Huh, impossible. Any individual business that manages to rise is a counterfeit. All so-called successful individual businesses are fake. Who counterfeits them? The Communist Party. Individual business, individual business, individual business. It's all CCP owned. Those are not real individual businesses. Real individuals can never rise. Do you understand?
Yes, Shifu.
They are terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. Do you understand?
Yes.
After hearing this, how do you feel? Shulin, how do you feel? Yanshin, how do you feel?
It's too much. Too complicated. I can't digest it all.
It's not complicated. Not complicated at all. I've made it very clear. There are also prefecture-level foreign liaison enterprises. You know nothing about them. Nothing. Just like the development of Shenzhen. They say Shenzhen developed because Southerners are capable, because people from Guangdong are capable. Give me a break. Go to Shenzhen and try doing it yourself. Beijing issues a single order, and companies nationwide rush to set up branches there, pouring in money. Of course it takes off. It's all state-driven. Do you understand?
Yes, Shifu.
If you don't believe it, try it. Now take the pig-headed top figure of the CCP, the so-called chairman. With a single word, any Chinese company can be shut down, instantly. Why? Because it all belongs to them. If they say shut it down, it's shut down. Do you have any say? Ordinary people are nothing. Do you understand?
Yes, Shifu.
Why am I asking you this? Why am I saying all this? Because they are utterly evil. I think everyone should hear this teaching so they can finally understand. And you're still talking about business, about corporate exchanges, about trade cooperation? You are facing the power of an entire state, 1.4 billion people. 1 unit of money each. Do the math. $1 per person. That's 1.4 billion. You come here as a foreign investor. No matter how capable you are still just an individual business, a private company, or a joint stock firm. Real shares are not state power. Do you understand?
Yes, Shifu.
Even companies this big, even good companies, can be taken over by the CCP. Take Volvo, a solid company, gone in one strike, acquired by the CCP. How terrifying is that? These are real examples. Now, I don't know about McDonnell Douglas, the aircraft manufacturer. I don't know whether it has been acquired or not. But in my view, they certainly want to, or already have, taken part of it. Do you understand? You can't even be sure it hasn't been. Once they acquire it, it becomes a CCP enterprise, right? Tell me,
Yes, Shifu.
can you possibly compete with them? Their population dies and is reborn, born and dies again. That's how it works, isn't it? Aren't they encouraging births again now? They can grow up on nothing but air. Do you understand?
Yes, Shifu.
How much suffering have the Chinese people endured? I am an ordinary Chinese citizen. How much suffering have I gone through? How much pain have I borne? Right? How much have I done for the state? There are things I have done that I still cannot tell you, right? I was purely a contributor. Only after contributing did I realize these bastards, these beasts, are not even human. The moment they take office, they immediately stop being human. This is what's truly strange. Once a person gains power and steps into a position of dictatorship, he will certainly indulge in prostitution. Every day, 10 in a day still wouldn't be enough. Do you understand? He will certainly be corrupt, because he has the final say. And without exception, absolutely without exception, he will be involved with drugs. If he doesn't touch them, his children will. Do you understand?
Shifu.
America doesn't understand this at all. How could Americans possibly know? Even Rubio, now the U.S. Secretary of State, may know a little, but he doesn't know everything. If the United States does not awaken, then I believe this talk of making America great again is impossible. Your so-called revival has only been helping the CCP, these cult-like organizations, right?
Yes, Shifu.
All right, I've explained all this to you. Do you have any thoughts? Any thoughts at all? If not, we'll end it here. That's it. Shifu will say no more. All right, Amitabha.
Amitabha. Homage to you, Shifu. Gratitude, Shifu.
Focus your mind. Practice sincerely, practice with care. What Shifu teaches is actually all related to cultivation. I'm telling you again, it is all related to cultivation. Others don't have this capacity. Do they know? They don't know at all. Do you understand?
Yes, we understand.
You must be extremely careful. People say Taiwan can protect itself. Look, how did CCP television stations get in? They simply paid money and set up TV stations in Taiwan. You can stare all you want, but you can't stop them, right? Why? They say this is called democracy. Ha ha! Allowing them to destroy democracy, and that's called democracy, right? I actually hope Trump can truly rebuild America. To do that, he must remove every CCP enterprise from the United States and pull every European and American company out of China. Leave not a single one. Only then could America rise again. Do you understand? Otherwise, there is no chance at all. He even wants to buy Greenland. What's the point of buying that? If you bring down the CCP, wouldn't everything be resolved? Isn't that right? You can't bring down the CCP. No chance. They are far too aggressive, far too powerful.